Welcome to this Q&A special, Q&A Ideas for NZ. We're down at the Cloud on Auckland's waterfront with some of the country's big thinkers and a panel of political leaders for our final program of 2012. In the next hour, we'll get our teeth into 8 big ideas for New Zealand, ideas the folk behind them think will make New Zealand a better place to live. Each person will pitch their idea in no more than 90 seconds. Then we'll debate its pros and cons with our panel of top politicians. Greens co-leader Matiria Ture, Winston Peters from New Zealand First, Auckland Mayor Len Brown, Justice Minister, Nationals Judith Collins, and from United Future Revenue Minister Peter Dunn. Well, wherever we sit on the political spectrum, we all agree New Zealand can do better. The question always, though, is how. We can't solve or discuss everything in just 1 hour, so these ideas are a conversation starter, a spark, so to speak. So let's get started. Great to have you with us. Our first big idea this morning is about New Zealand's population and comes from Federated Farmers Chief Executive Connor English. Connor, the floor's yours.
Thanks, Greg. New Zealand is a big country. We're bigger than United Kingdom. We're 67% the size of Germany. We're 72% the size of Japan. Our coastline is longer than both mainland USA and mainland China. Our economic zone is more than half the size of Australia. But the difference with these countries is that we've got a lot less population. Human capability is critical to all parts of our community and economy. In most parts of New Zealand, except for Auckland, the population is flat or in decline. And like all other slow growth indebted nations, we've got an ageing population. There's simply not enough people to produce the exports, to provide the services, to pay the taxes, and to build a future which is a first world income one. We simply need more people, but we've got to be smart about it in 2 ways. We've got to take the lid off our cities. And the tallest building that I passed when I came in here was a corner dairy. It's just a joke if Auckland wants to be an international city. We've got to stop gobbling up our productive land. So we've got to go up, not out in the cities. And this means that there'll be more affordable housing, and Auckland might actually have a chance of being a green city, of being an international city. And secondly, we need to be smart by spreading the population right across New Zealand, not just in Auckland. It actually is really critical that Auckland is successful, but Auckland is just one part of New Zealand. There is a wee bit more beyond the Bombay Hills. So look, we need to increase our population in smart ways, and we've got to stop thinking like a small country.
All right, aside from how Connor actually got here with the dairy, first of all, Auckland has half the migrants in New Zealand are in Auckland. First of all, Len Brown, is this something we should be getting behind?
So Auckland's growing flat out, as Connor has acknowledged, 2% per annum, so about the size of a Timaru every year. So I have no real difficulty in terms of increasing population growth. It's how we manage it and how we invest as the city grows. So he's right, we are going up. You have a look at the Auckland plan, you'll see that. We're looking to intensify. But the issue of dealing with that growth coming at you, you need to invest ahead of that growth, or at the very least with it, and ensure that you've got the economic base that comes with it. Otherwise, you're going to have high unemployment and an infrastructure deficit, which is what we're dealing with, those 2 issues right now.
Revenue Minister Peter Dunn, 15 million people by 2060 is the number Connor is hoping for, projecting. Is that realistic? Can we support that?
We certainly should be boosting our population. I think that we need to be making dramatic changes. This country is small in population, large in size. We've got capacity. We need the income to produce the tax to pay for the services that we require. We need to get a good skill mix. This country is based on immigration, after all. It's only a matter of when we came here. So all in favour of it. But I take your point very strongly about staging, about the necessary infrastructure changes, about spreading to make sure that we don't get a bubble in one area and a famine elsewhere. But we need to start thinking about it now. It's no good to say, well, wait, 20, 30 years down the track.
Winston Peters, immigration, any thoughts?
Everything Connor said, you could apply to Norway, Sweden, Denmark, Singapore and Ireland, and he would be proven to be demonstrably wrong. It's not numbers that matter, it's whether they're productive, they're engaged, they're highly employed, and the country's GDP is built up, not just consumption. And he's talking the old business roundtable argument. More mouths mean more profit for who? The nation? No. Some of these people about which their representation is their major concern. The fact is that for 25 years we've gone down this path. Now look, 54,000 left in the last 12 months who couldn't get a job. And he's suggesting another 10 million. This is madness.
Judith Collins.
Well, I've got a question for Connor. For a start, I'm really grateful that it's not a Federated Farmers compulsory breeding scheme, because it's always a worry, particularly if you're a woman. But the other question really is, how would you get them out of Auckland? Because, Connor, we've acknowledged half the new immigrants come into Auckland, and there's lots of reasons why, but how would we actually encourage them, other than to Christchurch, where a lot of new immigrants are actually going to be moving, particularly from Ireland?
If you do come up with a way to get them out of Auckland, would you agree those numbers are something we should be aiming for?
I'm not actually worried about immigration. I really enjoy immigration. In fact, my family came here from all parts of Europe because of immigration to get ahead in life. And frankly, I think it's one of the things that makes countries like Australia and the US great, and New Zealand a great place to be, is actually that most of us are not xenophobic. Most of us actually embrace immigration.
Connor, is this what you're wanting to hear?
Yeah, well, just to answer the question about how to get them out of Auckland, it might surprise the politicians that actually there are people who live outside of Auckland and they actually have quite happy, productive, successful lives. So don't assume that just because you're not in Auckland, you're not actually living or producing.
I don't think we're saying that, Connor.
On that part, you're correct. The fact is, there's massive capacity in Invercargill, Timaru, Oamaru, Dunedin, and even in the new Christchurch that's coming. But you've got to have a plan and a strategy about that. But we've had no plan whatsoever, but just to maintain. Now, our plan thus far has been, because I fear we're going to hear the same old plan all over again. Our plan thus far has been to replace massive exiting from our country with massive immigration of a person that is not as needy, as qualified as the one that we've just lost. Now, you've got to know what you're doing, and I agree with you to the extent that you've got to put them around New Zealand. But in Auckland here, look out the window at every peak hour traffic, and I tell you, a disaster is waiting for us as we speak.
So it's our first thing to get them out of Auckland, Winston?
Well, why are they coming to Auckland?
Well, we've only got low dairies. It's one of the aims.
It's one of the best cities to live in, for goodness sake.
Today.
Well, look, supersizing our population is not the answer to our prosperity. The answer to our prosperity is investing in our families and our children now. We have 250,000 kids whose ingenuity, whose capacity is being kept locked up because we don't have an investment in them when they're children, when they're babies, an investment in their families. So if we want to have a prosperous future and a population that is productive and inventive and all of those things, then invest in our kids now. Don't worry about trying to increase immigration. That's not the answer.
But what
the
we're
answer
saying,
is our
what Connor
kids and
appears to be
babies now.
saying here is there's not the domestic market, there's not the numbers.
Well, and that's not going to grow just because we start a program of immigration.
And so
the way that we're going to fix this is by planning. That's quite right. But by planning to invest in our families when they need it the most, which is when their babies are small, that is the key. And if we ignore that, we're heading down a very slow, long road to very difficult social issues and economic issues in the future.
But unless you're talking about a massive breeding program, it sounds like to me.
I think we've moved on to the breeding
I think that's what
We're actually not going to get the population that we need to be sustainable economically, socially and environmentally in the future. And what Connor's talking about, and I think he's right, is to start to take the chance now to think through in a staged way the implications in terms of numbers, the types of people we want, the skills we need, the geography we want to place them in, and make those decisions not just on a one-off basis, but over the next 10, 15, 20, 30 years. And that's the way we give this country a long-term sustainable
investing
future.
in families now
The politicians
and
have had their
babies
say,
now.
our audience. Can we get a show of hands who thinks Connor might be on the right track with what he is proposing here? Who thinks he is? And who thinks he's not? Okay, you might be batting that one uphill a little bit, Connor.
it's a meta perspective.
Still to come, ideas on tourism making migrants pay and jobs for young people. But after this short break, young entrepreneur Fedi Misriki on keeping 20-somethings in the country. Eight big ideas for New Zealand. Of course, it's not long enough to do them all justice, but as we said from the get-go, this has been about sparking discussion, and that we have. But let's go back to our panel one last time. What they think were today's very best ideas, starting on the end there. Peter Dunn.
Well, I think the fundamental best idea was the one from Connor English about our population size, because all of the other issues about entrepreneurship, about our tourism strategy, about how we promote employment and growth, all spin off having a realistic population for New Zealand. So I think that was the big idea.